Hi, and welcome to today's video. We'll be talking about how to set up a simple cash flow management system in your daily budgeting. So essentially setting up a budget, but more than that, how that actually looks like and trying to set it up as simply as possible. There's so many complex type structures out there. What we want to do, if you're not someone who has a budget or does budgeting, or cash flow management or anything like that, this is really that very first step to start automating a few things and really, it's a starting point, but it's a good starting point. So the first thing for us to do, work out how much you make and how much you spend. So the simplest way to do that is look through your last 3 months of bank statements. Hopefully these will be readily available. So in regards to working out income, that's generally fairly easy. But looking at the costs, I want you to actually segment these. So I want you to have 4 different segments as here: fixed costs, variable but direct debitable costs, variable paid by card costs, and discretionary. And I'll go through essentially what these are now. So fixed costs would be things like health insurance or something like the phone bill. Variable but direct debitable would be something like the power bill. So over time, over the year, you're probably going to have a pretty good estimate of how much it's going to be, but it will be variable from month to month. We've also got variable but paid by card. So this is things that it's still spending that you need to make, but you're going to be actually walking to a store and making that payment. So this is things like groceries. And then we have what we would term as completely discretionary. So things like coffees and golf games and that sort of thing. All right, so what we have here is essentially the guts of how we want to set up the accounts. Now, for most of you, if you've done no budgeting, you've done no cash flow management, anything like that, you're probably just going to have the one account that all funds go into and all funds go out of. The biggest change we're making here is in regards to that. So we're making our automation automated, and we're also putting limits on our day-to-day spending and our discretionary spending. Now those limits can coincide what you're spending right now. That's absolutely fine. But this allows us to know exactly how much we've got to be able to spend, and we're not just kind of making it up on the fly. We also want to add in several other accounts, which are the emergency savings account and an actual savings account. So I'll run you through essentially how this works. So your income comes in to this account. Now, this is your main account, but you're not going to be using this account for day-to-day transactions. This account is going to have your income in it. It's going to be sitting in it. Depending on if you have a home loan, it might be an offset, it might not be. But regardless, let's not worry about offset accounts or anything like that at the moment. Just from a budgeting point of view, it's a bank account which allows us to make direct debits and recurring payments from. So you might pay your rent as a recurring payment that you set up, as opposed to being able to do it as a direct debit. So all these fixed plus direct debits, they all come from this account, and it's automated. All budgeting is, it's all about automation and motivation. Automation, the more automated this is, that will build your confidence, because you'll see your savings grow, you'll see your emergency fund grow, and you'll be like, wow, I never had those things, and now they're growing. Confidence grows, motivation then grows even more. So this is really simple, it's really basic, but it will do pretty massive things in the long term. So what we're talking about there, the things that are coming out of that account are these two expenses here. So your fixed costs, health insurance, phone bill, that sort of thing, which are probably direct debitable, and also variable things that are direct debitable. So essentially anything that is set up as a direct debit, and also those weekly, fortnightly, recurring payments that you might have set up. Right, so let's have a quick chat about the others. So also from this account, you'll have funds going to your variable, not direct debitable. So this is your account for things like groceries, that sort of things, which you would know long-term how much you're going to be spending on it, but you do need to pay with either cash or a credit card. Now, this could be a cash account, so you could actually have this come out into a cash account, but not all these variable costs you're going to be able to pay with cash. Like if you're shopping online, for example, or something like that. So it's up to you how you want to set that up, but I would probably set that one up from a simplicity point of view as another account with a card attached to it that you can use. Now, how much do you actually send across? Generally, my thoughts are either weekly or fortnightly, and send across the amount of money that you would use on an average week. So if you went back through the last 3 months and in total all these costs averaged $500 a week, then I would send $500 a week across. And so over time, we're not trying to make money in this account, we're just trying to keep to a specific budget for specific things. Now, is this fancy? By no means. You can get a lot fancier than this. You can have heaps more different accounts, that sort of thing. But this is really a really solid way of doing this simply. What we also want to do, and we would also probably do weekly, and the reason why we do it weekly and not say monthly, because if you do it monthly, then from a budgeting point of view, you're going to see a lot of money there at the start of the month, and you might overspend in the first 2 weeks and then have nothing for the next 2 weeks. So weekly is a form of forcing you to spend X amount each week, essentially. So keeping to that cash flow management that we were initially discussing. So these are discretionary funds, so it might be game of golf, coffees, that sort of thing, things that you want to be able to do, but things that aren't related to this variable, not direct debitable up here, which is things that you need to do, like groceries, for example. Now, what we're also going to add in, so just to come back on that discretionary account, that could also be cash. Now, for myself, that account is cash. It just works easier for me, but for most people and going forward, we're probably going to see a lot less cash, so that's fine to be another account. Now, next one I want to talk about are emergency and savings. So hopefully when you've done your budget, you've looked through your spending over the last 3 months or so, you've got at least a little bit of a surplus that you can then squirrel away into these two accounts. So in total, you're going to have possibly 5 different accounts. Fixed and direct debitable, variable not direct debitable, discretionary, and then these two, emergency and savings, that we're talking about here. Emergency is really just for emergencies. So most people have an emergency credit card. Really, you're much better off having emergency cash. And if you want a credit card as well, because then you've got even more to be able to use in an emergency. What's the point of having an emergency come along? And emergencies do come along, and having to then debt yourself back up. Much better to have the forethought to actually be saving for those emergencies ahead of time. So it's essentially a savings fund that you use in emergencies. Now the savings fund here very simply, you're just saving for the long term. So it might be for something like a deposit for a house, that sort of thing. You could also have other savings accounts, like maybe a holiday, something like that. For the moment, as I said, I'm trying to keep this really, really simple. Just have one. But you want at least one savings account that you're not saving for anything particular. You're just trying to grow your wealth. And that's one of the biggest things that automation will do for you over time. You'll see that grow and you'll be like, wow, I've saved $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $10,000, and I haven't really had to do anything for it. That will increase your confidence. It'll increase your motivation around money and budgeting, and once you have those things, you'll be far better off. Now, do you actually need to sort of like have a card connected to these or anything like that? I would say no. I would say it's good to be able to push the money back in here quickly if needed. So obviously the emergency funds, you want to be able to use them in an emergency, jump on your phone app, send it back into that account. It's there straight away, and then you can spend for that emergency from there. So for this account, or you could send it to there and spend it from there. But what I was saying, this account likely will have a card attached to it, because that's going to make it easier to do direct debits anyway. And my preference is, when I say a card, I mean direct debit cards. Debit cards are much better. Or debit cards, sorry. So that's how you would use that emergency fund if you needed to. Of course, the savings fund could also be then kind of funneled off as part of a financial plan into maybe you're putting half of the money that goes into there into some sort of managed investment fund, something like that. That's fine. Obviously, we can make this much more complex, but what I want you to start doing is just this. Nice and simple. Get all your direct debits coming out of the one account, and then essentially pay yourself into accounts for what you know you will be spending, and only spend that amount. And that's pretty much it. I hope that helps. Obviously leave any questions, whatnot, below, and hit me up for any other kind of hints, tips, that sort of thing. Like I said, this is really a basic sort of one. It'll probably take you an hour or so to look through the last 3 months statements, and maybe probably less than that in at your local bank to set up the different accounts.